Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the European SDG Summit. So far, 4,954 attendees are registered on the virtual summit, which we started last Monday and which will end this evening. Please note that the 55 plenaries and roundtables will be accessible through video. And I'm pleased to ask Nick Robbins. He will be the moderator of the first panel. Nick is professor at the London School of Economics, and we could not have found anybody else better placed to moderate this first panel that is focusing on how to ensure twin transition is just. Nick, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we need to make sure that digital transition is not just, but stable. So it's wonderful to be with you all. And Monsieur Davignon, great to follow your leadership. And also we hope we have Commissioner Schmidt back. It's great to have this panel and have the opportunity to learn from three other leaders who we will be hearing from the world of labor, from the world of business and the world of finance. After a pact, we need to act. So this really is about how we can make real progress together in terms of the just transition to a green and digital economy. First, we'll hear from Guillermo Miranda, Global Head of CSR at IBM. Then we have the pleasure to hear from Martina McPherson, Senior Vice President, Strategic ESG Engagement at Moody's, and then Luca Vicentini, General Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation. Want to keep the first round of interventions short, particularly on your diagnostic, and then we'll come back, and particularly in terms of the key actions that you will be taking to deliver the just transition. So without more ado, Guillermo, over to you for your first remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Definitely it's a pleasure to be here, and we have to recognize that the ongoing pandemic is preventing us to be in person, but still I send all the attendees a virtual hug and our very good welcome from IBM and from the industry in this discussion. Sustainable practices should be at the core on how we rebuild better, on how we embrace the new normal. There is the power of personalization, the paradigm of we have built for the average consumer, we have built for the average citizen, we have designed for the average student should be gone. We have to phase out that mentality of average. If we have technology and we embrace the right practices, you can go deeper on personalization, and that gives you a much more level playing field to execute and to have a perspective of a career. So technology is at the core on how sustainable practices are helping us to build this new reality. And then the industry is also at the center of that. For a long time, we have divided the spaces, and we have said, okay, this is the role of the education sector. You are going to train the workforce, and we are going to be waiting here outside of the doors of universities, institutes, and we will take the talent. Industry should be inside the education sector. We cannot continue to live with this disconnection. Just remember 2 or 3 centuries ago, the guilds in the Middle Age were the center part of how education training happened, the certifications. Why we are kind of renouncing that over years with the industrialization. We have to regain that central role. So let me not go further here, but to remark that we have to embrace a future with sustainable practices. Technology is the magic and the accelerator of that journey, and the industry, the companies, should be at the center of this journey, collaborating with government, collaborating with society to make these things happen and not just remain a very nice declaration in a paper. Thank you, Nick.
Guillermo, wonderful, and thanks for keeping to time. I liked your phrase, phasing out the average. I think we want to have excellence in the just transition. So moving from the world of business to the world of finance, Martina, please, your views in Moody's, you're looking across.
The global COVID-19 outbreak has emerged as an economic and systemic social health, safety, and security crisis. It threatens the well-being of the world's populations, and in addition, millions of people are impacted or will be impacted from the resulting economic downturn and the loss of employment opportunities. So at a sovereign level, there's a growing question whether our social infrastructure, systems, and services can withstand this pandemic now and in the future. Governments are being asked to refocus and adapt their social efforts linked to health and safety, housing, transportation, and international collaboration. So building back better across environmental and social dimensions is now a call for sovereigns, policymakers, but also for institutions alike to ensure that the infrastructure, the entities, the products and services, as well as the employees, supply chains, and communities are future fit and resilient to address systemic ESG risks, such as this pandemic, climate change, and other systemic ESG risks to come over the long term. Secondly, with a just energy transition in the context of the EU's Green Deal, I would like to briefly highlight that we are now looking at transition plans and processes until 2030, which includes development, reskilling, and environmental rehabilitation needs. Member states will need to ensure that the plans are consistent with their national energy and climate plans. The deal also highlights that the just transition to a more sustainable and climate neutral economy will require substantial investments. But the concentration of extractive industries and related energy production, as well as carbon-intensive industries, will ultimately pose significant challenges to sectors and territories that are strongly reliant and interdependent on such activities. The sectors and territories will need to restructure and diversify their economy, maintain social cohesion, and retrain the affected workers, and focus on the youth to prepare the future of jobs, to ultimately ensure long-term resilience and recovery. This brings me to the last point of how can we establish a framework and the future of activities associated with environmental and social in this context, and how well these are managed. We look at stranded workers and the impacts linked to just a job transformation and suppression. And we also look at stranded communities and the links to the impact of reduced community investment. These multitude of criteria provide an insight into the key issues that are linked to decent work /SDG 8 and the implications of the current and potentially the future state of work. And with this, Nick, I'd like to conclude that for some time, the energy sector have felt stigmatized and victimized by the pressure on them to transition and deal with the workforce challenges. In the context of COVID-19, we are now looking at sectors and across sectors and how these type of companies in these sectors, for instance, in retail, travel, and entertainment, are managing a just transition in the context of SDG 8. So to build back better, we need to create decent work and quality jobs in accordance with nationally defined development priorities, as outlined by the Paris Agreement in 2015, while establishing frameworks and models beyond E to assess issues also linked to social adaptation and transformation. Wonderful. For all sectors. Thank you.
So we are going to face an employment tragedy That is also an economic tragedy, because of course behind these 40 plus 10 million people, there are thousands and thousands of companies that are at risk of completely disappearing from the markets. So this economic and social tragedy has absolutely to be prevented if we want to pave the path for a real just transition in the medium and long term when the COVID will pass. That's why we are appealing all the institutions to prolong the emergency measures, especially those for supporting companies and workers, at least until the springtime next year, and to extend the coverage of these emergency measures also to those categories of workers that are not covered, non-standard, self-employed, precarious, seasonal, and also to the small and medium enterprises that very often have been completely excluded from the access to these measures. The second element is what kind of recovery plan the European Union will be able to put in place. And there are two factors here that are very risky. The first one is that the timing counts, and the timing at the moment tells us very clearly that there will be no money available before June next year. Why I say that? Because first, there is not yet an agreement. The three institutions are discussing very hard and with a lot of difficulties to find a final compromise on the recovery strategy. And the second factor is that there are a lot of gaps in the final deal that the Council reached in July and is not yet transformed into an actual agreement with the other institutions. And these gaps, by the way, paradoxically, are exactly linked to just transition, because the Just Transition Fund has been cut, because all the funds linked to insolvency and restructuring have been cut, because all the funds linked to healthcare and social measures have been cut. And on the other side, there is no reference at all in the deal of the Council to the UN 2030 strategy, to the European Pillar of Social Rights, and to the involvement of social partners and stakeholders in designing, implementing, and monitoring the national recovery plans. Still, again, also on this, we appeal to all institutions, first of all, to make it a bit quicker, so to reach an agreement as soon as possible, because in any case, then the financial part to get the money from the European Commission will take time. But second, also because they need to fill these gaps. It's absolutely essential that the plan will be ambitious and effective enough to introduce a real process for just transition. And the third element that existed also before, but now it becomes even more important, is what kind of just transition are we going to design and implement for the future? Because, you know, just transition is not only the responsibility of the companies to invest in technology, is not only providing skills and training to workers. Of course, these aspects are fundamental, but if we don't have, on the one side, massive public investment in the areas that are necessary, second, massive job creation to compensate the job disruption that will happen in any case in many, many sectors, in a way that we can have more quality jobs created than the old-fashioned jobs that are destroyed. And third, if we don't put in place a proper governance to manage these processes and to accompanying companies and workers into this process of just transition, well, just transition, as I said at the beginning, will remain simply and only a very nice slogan and very nice words. In this respect, in this picture, social dialogue, collective bargaining, workers' participation, but also corporate social responsibility and due diligence. These four factors in terms of dialogue are absolutely crucial for all of us to manage this process properly. And I have really appreciated all what Guillermo and Martina have said, but one single remark: you never mentioned the trade unions. You know, colleagues, without a proper relationship between us, it will be impossible to manage all this. And without involving properly the trade unions and the employers' organizations on the other side, we will not succeed. So my final appeal is to all of us, let's strengthen social dialogue, collective bargaining, workers' participation, if we want really to succeed on just transition. Thank you.
Luca, thank you so much. And thanks particularly to bring the timing element of this. We are in a very urgent situation and we need to have those measures implemented now, and also about the quality of the just transition and the need to prevent further unemployment, as you in your first point. Maybe if I could go back to Guillermo, in your remarks, you did talk about collaboration as part of the key thinking. How do you see the role of social dialogue and the participation of your employees, in this process of change, so we deliver a just transition? Guillermo, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, we always believe on the power of partnerships and ecosystems. If you take a metaphor from the current environment that we see in the marketplace, where platform companies are creating new experiences for consumers, that is only possible because there is some magic on the APIs and the connectivity of the different pieces of the puzzle. That is the same on the social fabric. On the social fabric, we need to create these APIs. APIs are the bridges between technology platforms. So when you are in a social fabric, you need to create those APIs of dialogue, those APIs of collaboration. I lived some years in Africa, and we have a proverb that basically says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, far, go together. So we need to go together, because this is not an individual race. This is a collective race where we all have vested interests. Now, there are some basic cornerstones for this ecosystem partnership to work. And one of the pieces that is important is how we can transmit trust and authenticity on the conversations. This is not about positioning. This is about how we together create a different future for all of us. And sometimes when you are having these conversations, there is a lot of positioning instead of having a real dialogue, an authentic conversation. At the end, there is something that we always do in our commercial endeavors, which is user centricity. You start with user centricity. What is needed for the beneficiary, for the client, for the user? If you don't position these dialogues, these partnerships, anchor in what is really needed by the beneficiary, for the final user, by the citizen, you are not going to be successful. You are just going to be maneuvering on positioning. And again, I remark the importance of technology to facilitate all of this conversation in the social fabric. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so I think, Martina, we go over to you. We heard Luca's points, particularly about the timing, and particularly in the markets and the world you serve, which is the world of finance. Timing is really important. So really a thought from you, your views on the key issue to turn the just transition into reality, particularly in the world of finance, if I may. Thank you.
Sure. I think there are multiple layers of complexity. One, and up and foremost, is that we predominantly looked at the just transition, or initially at the green, then global transition in the context of E, in particular, climate. And ambition actions around climate have actually taken an imperative, but they also are intrinsically interlinked to the future for humanity. And there can be no doubt that a zero carbon world is possible if we manage this also as a human transition. And this is becoming an increasingly strong focus when and where, as you highlighted, social resilience, recovery, and building back better is concerned. And it's probably no surprise, hence, that we see an increasing focus in the COVID context and in the context now of a socio-economic transformation and transition, that we see an increasing focus from the finance industry on S issues. So I've been doing some work around looking when, how the different type of ES, potentially G, S and G are closely interlinked, issues are making it to the fore. And you probably have all followed the recent announcements here within industry, and that's on the investors as well as on the corporate side, when and where human rights implications and commitments and coalitions are concerned, like, for instance, the Investor Coalition on modern slavery. But we've also seen that now the trajectory at a policy end is moving from E to S. Just a few days ago, the European Commission announced, and delighted to hear more on this, that they are putting together a working group for social taxonomies. And I think that's moving the ball game as well, also when and where the entire investment and capital markets value chain are concerned. And from what we've heard also from the unions today, there is a need for more cross-border collaboration. There is a more need for understanding and financing the issues that we are now collectively facing in the future. And I think finance and the world of finance, policy and industry has a clear interconnected role to play to, first of all, determine the fundamentals, factors and criteria relevant for consideration, to then actually establish side by side the relevant instruments, and then to literally put investment forward, maybe through public-private partnerships, when and where these are most needed in our communities, in our society.
That's great, Martina. Luca, if I could turn to you for the last word for this this round. I think you very clearly in your first intervention set out some priorities, and particularly I was struck by your point about timing. What do you see in terms of the sort of key decision points, maybe towards the end of the year, where we could actually close the gap between the sort of slogan of just transition and the reality? Luca, to you, please.
Thank you, Nick. Well, as I said before, prolonging the emergency measures to bridge the gap and accelerating the process for approving the recovery plan, but by including a strong just transition and social dimension in it will be key. But there is also the element that I see in the chat. There was an interesting discussion between people connected about our agricultural policy and the need to control prices. I think this is very key in the global dimension because, you know, sustainability has a price. It's about investment, of course, but it's also about stopping the downward spiral in terms of the dumping on prices, on wages, on equality, on exclusion, etc., etc. Europe, if we want to manage properly a just transition process in Europe, we need to be able to set a level playing field at global level. We have to look at the problem in a global perspective, and Europe has the responsibility to set standards also for the rest of the world. By the way, we are seeing how all multilateral institutions are unfortunately struggling and in some cases even failing in setting these standards. We have seen the trade wars triggered by Mr. Trump. We have seen the crisis of the WTO going on. We have seen how the OECD failed, unfortunately, in setting some standards on taxation at the global level. We see how even the ILO struggles to try to implement this social pact that they wanted to launch with the decisions on the centenary. So Europe setting this level playing field, Europe setting standards is fundamental. And in this respect, of course, the recovery plan and the Green Deal will go in this direction. But it's also very important that there are some kind of legislative and non-legislative initiatives that should accompany the process. Social taxonomy, Martinez was referring to, is very crucial, as is also very crucial what the Portuguese presidency plans to do with the Porto Summit to set a EU 2030 agenda on transition and social. And it's also very important what the European Commission is announcing in terms of legislative initiatives on fair wages, on due diligence, on platform work. All this will shape the future of work, not only in Europe, but also in the global dimension. So we have always to keep in mind the global dimension, while at the same time we accelerate and we implement the processes at the European level, I think.
Fantastic, Luca, and thanks for bringing in the agricultural dimension. Often we think about the just transition purely on energy. I think the agricultural sector really important, and particularly also to think about a food policy in terms of access and pricing of food for consumers. So thank you for that, and also the key point about a strong multilateral framework, which clearly the European Union has been a pillar for, and hopefully we'll see that be restored in the coming weeks, and indeed potentially through the G20 next year with Italy at the lead. So thanks so much to the panelists. I've learned a lot, the importance of collaboration, the importance of this integrated framework around the SDGs, the importance of clear policy signals, of timing, and also for social dialogue and involvement. I'm going to hand back to you, Jan, for the next session.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to the speakers. This was really rich. We will not try again the impossible technology to have Mr. Schmidt. We will try to see if we can do that after this plenary. But I can tell you that there has been extremely constructive discussions directly between Etienne Davignon and Nicolas Schmidt over the last weeks, and we are putting in place also a strong roadmap of collaboration, especially when it comes to the European Pact for Skills, which Nicolas Schmidt was about also to talk about. This Pact for Skills will be launched on the 10th of November by Thierry Breton, Nicolas Schmidt, and the German presidency. It's my pleasure now to invite Christian Scharf from PricewaterhouseCoopers to moderate the second panel, where we will have a deeper dive on the future of work. Christian?
Yes, Jan. I hope you can hear me. It's
very well.
Perfect. And thank you very much for giving us the floor now. So my name is Christian Scharf. I'm a partner at PwC. I've got a full career in business and HR for over 20 years. And I'm focusing these days, for the last years actually, on skills and upskilling. I'm also chairing Inspiring for More Sustainability, which is a national CSR organization affiliated to CSR Europe, supporting over 200 organizations. And I'm the author of a book, which I just posted on the chat a minute ago, about upskilling. It's my great pleasure today to chair this roundtable with 4 distinguished guests. First, Angeliki Dedopoulou from Huawei, Carlo Albini from Enel, Julie Foulon from Molengeek, and Hanka Boldeman for JP Morgan. And I would like to ask each of them to introduce themselves in 1 minute. So maybe ladies first. Hanka, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. So my name is Hanka Boldeman. I'm representative of JP Morgan Global Philanthropy based in Frankfurt.
Thank you very much. Julie?
Hello, my name is Julie Foulon. I'm the founder of Girlic, a platform dedicated to women in order to acquire digital skills, co-founder of Molengeek, which is a tech incubator and a coding school in Molenbeek, and also co-founder of Startup V, a new media dedicated to startups.
Thank you, Julie. Carlo?
Thank you, Christian. My name is Carlo Albini. Good morning, everyone. Since October 1st, I'm head of Innovability People and Organization in the Enel Group. I'm an electronic engineer. So I consider my professional journey as a kind of a paradox. I'm a man, I'm an engineer. I work in a leading company in an industry that is defined as technology intensive, but I discovered my, let's say, professional purpose in roles that are dedicated to the impact that we can have on the engagement, development, well-being, caring, and broadly speaking, the experience of future and current employees.
Thank you, Carlo. Angeliki?
Thank you, Christian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Angeliki Dedopoulou, and I'm working in Huawei's Brussels office, focusing on the policy aspects of artificial intelligence, digital skills, and blockchain technology. Before that, I had the pleasure to working as an advisor to digital employment, social affairs, and inclusions in the unit skills of qualification that focusing on the European skills agenda.
Well, thanks a lot. And we're going to stay with you, Angeliki, because without waiting, I'm going to ask you the first question about Huawei and to understand how Huawei is clearly contributing to the European skills agenda, including the engagement for the Skills Pact Jan was just talking about a minute ago, digital skills or job coalition. So can you tell us more about the role of Huawei in there?
Sure, Christian. So first of all, the European Skills Agenda is an excellent initiative of digital employment, social affairs and inclusion, which aims to help individuals and businesses develop more and better skills and to put them into practice. by first strengthening sustainable competitiveness, as set out also in the European Green Deal, ensuring social fairness, putting into practice the first principle of the European Pillar of Social Rights, access to education, training and lifelong learning for everybody, everywhere in the EU. And this is where also we are aligned in Huawei with our Tech for All project, for example, which really aims on digital inclusion. In Huawei, we are fully aligned with the objectives of the European Skills Agenda, and we have various projects in place that help Europeans equip with the right skills. We have the Seats for the Future project, which is an initiative that aims to help cultivate young talent, ensuring that the young people have the skills and mindsets needed to be competitive in the workplace of the future. This year's Seats for the Future became digital, and we are planning to upskill around 650 students from 24 EU member states participating. Huawei is also supporting the European Vocational Skills Week, which will take place between 9 and 13 of November, another very important initiative of the European Commission that focuses on promoting vocational education and training across Europe. We have also recently participated in the survey of the EU Pact for Skills, and we're planning to actively contributing to this excellent initiative as well. We're also members of the Digital Skills and Job Coalition and committed to 6 pledges. So what we aim here is to improve teachers' digital skills and their ability to apply ICT skills in their teaching, help young people in Europe to master digital skills needed for employment, provide basic digital skills training for people who have never been online, and promote reading and self-learning using digital content. As a global information and communication technology and as a company operating in Europe for 20 years, we aim to improve digital awareness and digital skills of European citizens. And this is why we're also planning to invest 1 million euros for young European talents to create innovative applications and services. At the same time, we will also provide to students free access to development courses and virtual code labs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's a clear view of how you deal with that at corporate level with very concrete initiatives, and we got in mind these figures about the students. And I also get the point that you're working both on the skills but also on the mindset. So I think it's also very important to take that not only the hard skills are important, but soft skills are actually of importance. It's a good transition to move to you, Carlo Albini at Enel, because while we were preparing this session, I understood you have a very strange title. So can you tell us more about this strange title?
Yeah, Christian, you are right. My role is actually brand new and unique, I think. So first of all, let's touch the organizational allocation. I belong both to the people and organization and to the innovability function of the group, reporting to the respective directors. Innovability, just a few words to explain what it is. For us, it's the crisis of innovation and sustainability in our organization since a few years ago. And we strongly believe, obviously, that this crisis is functional to the vision that we cannot create shared value unless we innovate. Coming to the responsibility of the role that fall in the perimeter of our unit, we are accountable for setting the targets of HR-related sustainability KPIs for our group and for managing the portfolio of initiatives aimed at reaching these targets. In pursuing these objectives, we have a direct responsibility with a dedicated team on people care and diversity and inclusion, while for the other HR processes that typically are contributing to sustainability targets, such as recruiting, training and development, compensation and benefit, we will act coordinating and monitoring the actions that the respective process owners will put in place. Then to complete the set of accountabilities of our unit, there is the innovation area, where we will manage the innovation of HR practices. We will ensure the dissemination of open innovation and the entrepreneurship culture throughout the group, and we'll coordinate the idea hubs worldwide. And last but not least, we are also in charge of employer branding. that is actually consolidating in the employee value proposition most of the value that is delivered by the other teams in the unit. So it may seem a very diversified unit, but if you think of the strategic relevance of sustainability, open innovation, employee centricity, and inclusion for our group, I mean, you can easily grab the essence of our organizational choice.
Well, thanks, Carlo. I think it's quite interesting because, of course, as we heard, you can have a policy at group level and try to implement with initiatives, but when it comes to your own company, then you still need to have an organization that enables you basically to bring together CSR, sustainability in this case, but also how do you make this happen on the HR side? And as our topic today is about upskilling, I thought it was a very good example on how organization could pull together this, and having you somewhere at the border of those two very important departments at Enel. I'd like now to move to Hanka at JP Morgan Foundation. You're in charge, Hanka, of this upskilling site within the JP Morgan Foundation. Can you maybe explain us why JP Morgan is investing in upskilling? What are the motivation of your company to do so?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Christian. So really, at JP Morgan, advancing economic opportunities and resilience is really core to what we do and has been so for a long time. So we recognize that when communities do well, our company does well, and we invest in our customers, employees, and communities to break down barriers to opportunity. I just want to, before I move to the skills part, just want to reference two announcements that really illustrate our commitment, but also how we can bring the broader tool set that we have as a firm to the table for those issues. One is a recent announcement on racial equity that we did, where we're investing $30 billion to advance racial equity in the US. So we'll invest in advancing home ownership, affordable housing for Black and Latinx communities, we'll grow minority-owned businesses, improve access to banking, but also build a more diverse workplace. So all those pieces are really, where we can really bring our expertise and as a business, as a policy actor, and also in philanthropy to the table. The second one is that we really recently announced that we're adopting a Paris-aligned financing commitment to really help our clients capitalize on economic and environmental benefits of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we're setting emission targets until 2030 and really are supporting our clients to make the transition through really bundling our resources and also creating a center for carbon transition to help them. On skills specifically, I mean, we've long recognized the core importance that skills have as a key to participating in today's economy. And as part of our corporate responsibility commitment, we're really engaged and committed to support vulnerable people to gain a foothold and really, move towards prosperity. So in 2013, we really started on this journey, and we launched our global initiative, New Skills at Work, through which we have partners with 740 nonprofits over 5 years and supported 150,000 people to access quality jobs in growing industries. So it was quite a journey, and we've learned a lot in this process, which is why in 2019 we renewed this commitment. And the bank will invest a total of $350 million globally to develop and scale innovative efforts to prepare individuals, particularly now for the skills that they need in a rapidly changing economy. This year really has been a wake-up call in many ways. The impacts of the pandemic have been felt across society, but they've also deepened many of the inequities that we have in our society. So we think that the challenges that motivated our work in this space have not only remained relevant, but have in fact deepened. The need to support career transitions that workers need to make has multiplied, and they need support in this. So we really need to work together across the whole spectrum, public, private, think tanks, etc., to make a change collectively.
Well, thanks, Anka. And I think it's an ideal transition to Julie. We clearly have seen the flow, big corporate and big objectives going to the organization, and now how a foundation like yours, but also what are the motivation of your bank to kind of fund. And we heard about a massive monetary commitment you have towards us. We clearly agree that there is more and more business case for upskilling these days, with not only with technology enhancements, but also with COVID pushing technology even more forward at a faster pace. Now in the cities, and actually on the civil side, I would say, in a place like Molenbeek, which was known or has been known in the last years for maybe some negative aspects, I'm very curious to see what Julie's experience. Maybe can you tell us more, Julie, about your experience in this Brussels district called Molenbeek?
Yeah, sure. So in Molenbeek in 2016, we decided to set up a place for youngsters aged between 18 and 25 years old, and to allow them to be able to acquire digital skills and to create their own company. Alors, in Molenbeek, you have to understand that you have 40% of unemployment rate among the young generation. If you go to another district of Brussels, which is Laken, you've got 50% of unemployment rate. And on the other side, if you look at the market, the digital skills and IT skills are really needed. And companies are looking for IT profiles while you have youngsters who are put aside, some of them drop out of school very early, and there's no connections between the needs of the market and those youngsters. Alors, the good things with this digitalization, that you can acquire digital skills and become an IT developer, for instance, even if you didn't go to school. And you can become an entrepreneur even if you didn't go to school, because it's just a question of mindset. And then we decided to combine all those skills within one place called Molenbeek, and to allow youngsters without any diploma, coming from different cultural area or financial area, and they go there, and what's important is to help them to acquire digital skills through a very innovative pedagogy based on concrete things. Why concrete? Is that because most of them, they drop out of school because they had a lack of sense. They didn't really see what was the point to go to school. But by doing concrete things like creating apps or websites, they could be proud of what they were doing and then project themselves into society. And then what was interesting is that at the end of Molenbeek, most of them, they found a training in a company. Some of them start their own company, or they have been recruited. So you have to understand also that we had to do like a big work with the human resources in order to help them to facilitate the entry of the market to these youngsters. Voilà, this is what we are doing.
Well, that gives a lot of hope, because clearly we know that access to training, but also to detect those people and to bring them to market is quite a challenge. I'd like to reboot and to come back to the beginning with Angeliki, and to Angeliki, you told us about, the mega aspects of the policy you have at VW. I'd like to deep dive maybe in one on your topics, like AI, for instance, and to understand specifically on AI, how do you help people with regards to education, skills development, to precisely, help people which you are somewhere disrupting with the new technologies you're bringing in. So as you are a disruptor, how do you help people to remain aboard? So Angeliki, on AI.
Thank you, Christian. This is indeed a very interesting question. So, as has been also stated at the Commission's white paper on AI, the European Commission stresses that the European approach to AI will focus strongly on skills development to avoid digital skill shortages. Also, the updated version of Digital Education Action Plan will also help making better use of data and AI-based technologies like learning and predictive analytics to reinforce education systems and make them suitable from a digital point of view. As you already know, we're working actually in a digitally transformed world, which requires the workforce to adapt, education and learning systems to change, and a major investment in the reskilling of citizens. In Howie, we have also many projects that use AI to help young students also upskill, and we also have a project called StorySign, which helps young people with visual disorders to have access to education. In general, AI is having a huge impact on education, learning, and future of work. Firstly, AI has the potential to transform how our education systems operate and the ability to empower teachers and students of all abilities. Secondly, the kinds of skills we need to learn in this new digitally enabled world are changing. While the number of AI experts at the same time is estimated to be double every year. So we see that the basic knowledge needed for work in this area requires advanced levels of scientific, mathematical, and technical skills that are not easy to acquire. And this is actually something that we're working very hard within Howie. And since we're working on technologies like AI, to, let's say, transfer this knowledge also to other people. Talking now again on AI and the impact of education, we can see that AI can assist in adjusting learning based on individual needs, allowing, for example, for a differentiation that is now practically impossible for teachers who have to manage large groups of students in each class. AI can also help make global classrooms available for all, and it's something that we also try to achieve with our DigiTrack project. AI has proven to be capable of assessing written answers to tests, for example, and this would allow teachers to spend more time and more quality time with each student. And also, it can assist in adjusting learning based on the individual needs. What I would like to mention here is that there is a need for an inclusive lifelong learning based approach when it comes to AI in education and training, in order to help people transition between jobs seamlessly. Another important element is that we need to adapt vocational and educational training systems to AI, considering, for example, the introduction of new or revised education and training curricula, such as robotics, computational thinking, machine learning, data science, and so on. And we need to increase cooperation and coordination between the public and the private sector. Last but not least, and it's something that we also see today with our technical problems in connection, I have to say that connectivity plays a very important role in the digital transformation. And with connectivity comes AI capability. So a long-term vision is essential. We urge policymakers to look at the future invested in connectivity now. We need to create the regulatory certainty and investing in network connectivity actually immediately. And of course, connectivity is strictly linked with accessibility. We need proper training and upskilling of workers. And this is something that it should be in each member state's agenda, so that they can actively take part in the renewed digitalized society. We are here to help Europe achieving that, and we're glad to see today these distinguished panels and how we can actually they're bringing together different elements of how this can be achieved. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you, Angeliki. I mean, I take from what you just said, of course, that if I'm referring to Julie, that there is hope. And when we hear that the number of AI specialists needs to double every year, it's not like the same down the chain for kind of most of the specialists we have in the IT chain, for sure. Clearly, the partnership between public and private is a key element, and we'll come back on that one in a minute. And I think one of the critical elements I can see, and I will come back after all the intervention on this one, across the globe actually, is the adaptation of curriculum, but also the training of teachers. Clearly, we have collectively worldwide, and it's clearly the case in Europe as well, we are laying back with regards to curriculum, and we are laying back clearly with regards to teachers, professor education, and the link between the industry and its needs and what is kind of currently delivered at the education level. That's enabled me basically to go to Carlo, because Carlo, we just talked about AI and NL. I'd like maybe to focus on something very specific to your industry, which is also very linked to CSR, which is the shift from thermic industry, for the thermic energy production, to the renewable, so the solar panel, the windmills, and cogeneration, etc., which obviously is kind of pushing most of your engineers to shift also their knowledge from the old technique or the current thermic technology to those new kind of generation technology. So how do you deal with that at Enel, Carlo?
Christian, you touched a very relevant strategic, let's say, stream for us. The transition from thermal to full renewable generation is a long journey that will have intermediate steps in which we will see an accelerated exit from coal generation by leveraging the capacity of gas-fueled plant to ensure stability and flexibility of the energy system during the transition phase. Meanwhile, registering a substantial acceleration of renewable capacity, working on different technology, as you mentioned, to maximize their effectiveness together. In this context of a multi-year transition plan, we already started a reskilling plan, a reskilling program, in order to ensure the long-term employability of the affected operation and maintenance workforce in our countries. Considering the number of people involved, that are around 2,400 people by 2024, out of which already 1,300 more or less are going to be trained by the end of this year, we can consider this actually a reskilling program at scale. Let's call it this way. The first step of the program has been a thorough analysis of the skills needed to sustain the transition in the following 5 years plan, resulting also in a picture of the expected, let's call it a role and job transition or migration towards different organizations. Then we went through the analysis and the assessment, obviously, of the skill gaps before moving the people to the new allocation. Movements that are planned either from coal to CCGT plant, meaning gas-fueled plant, or from coal to renewables directly, depending on the actual fleet of generation plants that we have in the different geographies. And then starting at that time, the real reskilling program for each and everyone that was involved in the migration. The reskilling program is actually, in a nutshell, is actually a blended mix of a formal taught classes that obviously is now converted in digital classes during the pandemic outbreak, and the shadowing with a progressive autonomy that is left to the O&M operators during the program. So as you can understand, we are interpreting the program in a way that is quite similar to our onboarding programs for new hires, for example. Last important point to be mentioned, and is quite relevant for me, is the relevance of the social dialogue in this initiative to facilitate and smoothen the deployment of this kind of a program. Because a transparent and anticipated dialogue aimed at sharing the purpose of the program and removing potential barrier to change is of the utmost importance and on our experience.
Yeah, clearly. Thank you, Carlo. I think I would agree that communication in this environment is absolutely key. And in our experience, This is always a big part of those kind of projects because we are talking about people's career, meaning there is a lot of fear behind about losing your job. It's about, am I going to be capable? Am I going to be chosen? Is this any more secure? Is there a future for me? And at the end of the day, basically, am I able to pay for the bills at home, etc.? That's really, you know, we are at the base of the Maslow pyramid somewhere when we are touching on this. And so communication with all stakeholders, actually, not only with individual, but also with unions, also with external stakeholders, with public bodies are of extreme importance in those kind of projects to make sure that you get everybody aboard. There are a lot of conflicting interests actually in all those projects, with people sometimes protecting some, what I would call old gardens or safe gardens, what they thought would be their garden, which is now a desert almost, but they are still thinking that rain is falling, although it's getting desertic. So it's quite interesting, and thank you for that testimony. I'd like maybe to move back to Hanka. Hanka, we heard a lot of topics which are encapsulated within upskilling. There is so many from individual upskilling, technology enhancements, but also education. There is about helping teachers. There is about building curricula. When it comes to JP Morgan Foundation and the funding you're allowing or allocating, what is the particular focus and what do you want to achieve actually in the upskilling fields?
Very good question. What we do see is that upskilling, I mean, this requires efforts of huge scale. It's a very complex field. As we see, you know, workers that are currently have a job, but they have a lot of constraints also, you know, to invest, to understand their skill set, and to make the time and really find the place to, you know, move on and explore new careers. So that's why we really see that this is an area where public and private, non-profit, philanthropic actors need to work extremely closely together. And that's why we also really are excited that the European Commission is really spearheading this agenda as part of the European Pact for Skills. From the JP Morgan corporate responsibility side, our philanthropy investments, we really build partnerships with nonprofits across all countries, like many countries in Europe. And really, the aim is to develop innovative, impactful initiatives that prepare individuals who risk being left behind for the jobs of the future. So it's the whole spectrum for young people starting out with major barriers in life, for newcomers seeking, you know, a first employment in a new country, but also increasingly the whole issues around progression and reskilling for low-skilled workers. So that they can build their resilience, but also economic security. So just to name two examples, so in France, we do a lot of work, for example, in Saint-Saint-Denis, a Paris suburb with many social challenges. And just as one example, we work with Social Builder and really support women to access digital jobs and professional development opportunities in communications and coding through a variety of boot camps, learning modules, but also networking opportunities and job placement. In Germany, we work with Redi to enable newcomers to access careers in technology. None of our projects that we support can work in isolation. You need, in order to train successfully for the labor market, it's essential to build partnerships with employers to leverage private, public funding, and also through strong collaboration across public and nonprofit sectors. But also for all those grassroots efforts, it's really essential to support these, for example, through actionable data, through innovative models, to really empower those initiatives. We all know that there's a wealth of studies on future of work and the disruptions that we should expect across different sectors, but actionable data that really helps training providers, employment services, individuals to really have a more nuanced view of their pathways is still quite rare. That's why We're currently working, for example, with Nesta in the UK on a project that's called Mapping Career Causeways that really builds data across France, Italy, Germany, and the UK to help disaggregate different skills profiles of jobs and map viable and desirable pathways for lower skilled workers. We also collaborate with the OECD, for example, to compile evidence to design and pilot more effective career guidance for adults, which is, of course, also an area that's currently not very strongly on the agenda in many places. But we also recognize that data is only part of the story, of course. Changing the practices of employers, organizations, and workers really needs to be front and center, and really building a culture of continuous learning and upskilling, and of companies to invest in their staff. So against this background, I'm really also proud of our project, Upskill for Future, that we have with CSR Europe, where the objective is really to empower companies to better analyze and benchmark their HR practices and more effectively support lower skilled workers. The intention is to build also models for staff development, for analysis, with the intention of sharing these more broadly across sector associations, and to make these available also for small businesses.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to give the floor, because I know Julie has another commitment at 12:30. So I have a last one for you, Julie, because I mean, it's a difficult environment, and they are all difficult, of course, but I guess yours is very particular. What were the critical success factors actually to get your initiatives to work? What are, you know, the top 3 or top 5 things that absolutely need to be there in order for it to work?
But we need, first of all, partnership, public and private partnership, because we need to be aligned with the need of the market. We need to continue to have some funds. It's sometimes very difficult to get some. So voila, and so basically it's really public and private partnership. And I just wanted to come back to something I wanted to point out, that we are talking a lot about youngsters, but you have also to realize that women have to be upskilled and reskilled. And today with Girlik especially, we are facing women who are struggling in their career because they have skills, but the digital skill, they don't have that. And so it's really important to help them to through short training, online training, to reach them. Just to give you an idea, just in 2020 with Girlik, we have been able to target and to train over 2,000 women through short online trainings, and it's working. And online training is especially working for women, because what we don't have is time. And thanks to technology, we're able to enter in their house, in their home, and to target them and to reach them. And for Molengeek, it's youngsters. We need to be there and to have like a place where we can welcome them in order to be like a stepstone to other organizations.
Well, thanks a lot, Julie. And I think we are coming slowly to the end of this panel, and I see the clock is also ticking. So just to like to thank the panelists. I hope to the audience we've been able to give you the broad spectrum of the topics on upskilling. This is just a gigantic journey, I must say. According to World Economic Forum that was released early this week, 40% of the current workers are expected to change their skills in the next 5 years. 40%. We're not talking about tens of millions. We are talking about most likely 100 million plus people in Europe that will need to shift their skills in the foreseeable future. That, of course, will not happen only at public sector, only at private sector, nor at foundation level. That will request everybody to collaborate. Obviously, it's a big journey for the corporates, the people, but also for the education and the trainer in general, because the enabler will be to be there. That will request a lot of technology to come to Huawei point. We will need, of course, communication tools. We will need AI. when it is about to scale up on these topics, we will need some tools to analyze who will be or should be upskilled and into what, so that we can tailor but at scale for each person. So that's quite a big endeavor. You were talking, Julie, about clearly it is not about only young people. Of course, it's about current workers being in their workforce. There will be upskilling within the same company, obviously, but there will be also upskilling to find a job in another company, because maybe your company doesn't need anymore that level of manpower, or there is a shift of business model. So there is a new word now which comes into the vocabulary, which is not only upskilling but also outskilling. So upskilling for another job outside of your current environment. And basically, when you look at the overall environments being COVID, with the push on the ways of working, with the technology shift, with the new business models, with the demographic shift, clearly upskilling will be on our agenda for years to come. So thank you very much, panel, for this, and I hand over to Jan.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I just would like to ask, before we go to the closing by Etienne Davignon, Nick, is there in 1 minute any additional remarks you would like to share after this great panel? I have witnessed 8 people. They are all champions in, I learned, innovability from Carlo. I think this was really very, very rich. Nick, anything to add? And then we close.
Well, great to listen to Christian's panel, and I think that focus on skills, just to maybe think a few things. The just transition is now, is a question of urgent timing. We need to transform our decision making, have real participation in the workplace, in our communities, in policy making, and it's a question of investment. Clearly, public investment, Europe's recovery plan, making sure that happens quickly, but also private investment and making sure that that flows into not just the skills, but also the technologies and natural capital. So the just transition is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you again to all the speakers, also to Christian and Nick. This was really very, very high, very professional. Thank you so much. Now it's my pleasure to turn to Etienne Davignon to close this last plenary of the week. Etienne Davignon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the panelists and all the participants. Of course, it was a pity that we missed out on Commissioner Schmidt, because it's clear that if there is one thing on which everybody agreed, is that the Pact for Skills is essential. And it is essential that it gets backing from the European Union. And I agree, it has to be part of the recovery plan. It has to be able to be financed. It requires public and private cooperation, and it has to happen now. The COVID crisis is only increasing the difficulty that we are encountering, and so the real question: are we capable of doing it now? Will we have the resources? The complexity of the topic has been clearly identified, and we need many practical examples. Studies we have enough, I believe. What we need is experimentation, learning from what happens and working together. That is what we will do, and really participate and push the European Union so that the Pact for Skills becomes effective, implementable, and workable. Thank you to all. We will continue the debates on the spot with you, and we will try to be successful, which is, after all, our main objective.